this is the first in a series I want to do on how reading the Bible in Greek differs from reading it in English, and also on how reading passages that are not brought to church opens your mind in new ways, because they have selected what gospels are for what Sundays in church. And that knowing those gospels doesn't mean that we know the gospels, right? Because all that is never read could be revealing in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So my belief is that the word agape comes in with Christ. I cannot say that it never existed before, but I have never encountered it in ancient literature. The Symposium of Plato talks about the different kinds of love, and it finishes with eros. There is no agape in that list. So you start with storgi, which is the way in which a mother loves a child. And then you have philia, which is friendship and brotherhood. And then you have the love for philosophy, and you have eros. So I will talk a little bit about how I see agape brought in as a different force. And to do that, I will talk about what it takes to become an initiate. What are the three portals that must be crossed from the perspective of Christianity? So if you look at the celebration of Epiphany, it's on the now very famous January 6th. But there is two things from a Christianity's perspective that we celebrate on that day. One is the visit of the three kings to baby Christ, and the other is the baptism of Christ. And it's interesting that the two fall on the same day. And if you look at the gifts of the three magi from an epiphany perspective, an epiphany means revelation from above, right? So the apocalypse, for example, is an epiphany. If you look at the gifts of the magi from an epiphany perspective, you see how they each symbolically contribute to the crossing of these three portals. So before I go there, though, I want to talk about a passage that occurs at the end of John's Gospel, in which Jesus 3 times asks Peter, "Do you love me above all else?" And the word he uses for love is agape. And 3 times Peter answers, "You know, I love you," but the term he uses for love is philia, which is friendship or brotherhood. And Jesus commands him 3 times to shepherd his sheep and live the life of a man who ages and dies. And he ends his command with the words, "Follow me." Then Peter notices the agapitos, or beloved apostle, who is next to Christ, and he asks, "What about him?" And Jesus answers, "He stays with me till I come. What is that to you? Follow me." So in a way, I think John is trying to establish his identity and role as separate from that of Peter, that he is on the he's agapitos, which is really now becoming the word for initiate. It used to be before that megas erastis, the great beloved, but with Christ it becomes agapitos as beloved. Agapitos means beloved. And if you look at Luke 3:22, that's Luke's description of the baptism of Christ. And the Epiphany there is expressed in the words of, "You are my beloved Son, in you I thrive." That's how it reads in Greek. But again, agapitos is the term here, and thrive usually is translated in "you I am pleased." But I think it's interesting to use the exact term that you have in Greek as thrive. And it means that in somebody who is an initiate, the divine thrives. That's how I read it. But if you don't believe in initiation and if you don't believe in that type of experience, then you have to translate that in other ways, like in "you I am pleased." And then immediately after that sentence, Luke proceeds to describe the ascending genealogy of Joseph through Nathan, the son of David, all the way up to Adam. So I think it's really interesting that this beloved son, he's reminding me truly his physical lineage is, and can you believe that they could go all the way back to Adam? I mean, imagine what records were kept for that bloodline to the. I think if there is anything characteristic of the Jewish people is that they observe and reveal the bloodline, revere the bloodline, right? That's more so than any other nation or any other race or any other tradition. So if John stands with Christ while Peter follows Christ, there is a difference between agape and philia. And depending how that Greek is translated, if both are translated, "Yes, I love you," you lose that difference, right? Mm-hmm. So agape is active love. It's something you do in order to raise your consciousness up. And apo means to lift up, to raise up. And that's different from the feeling of friendship or brotherhood that you get, which is more passive. If it's there, it's there. You don't create it, right?
But I also see the difference in that if you're standing with someone, you're there with them. If you're following someone, you're still learning from them. You're following them. Whereas if you're standing with them, you're in agreement or
you're committed.
Committed, yeah.
Right. And I know John does that because then he finishes his gospel by saying, "I am the beloved apostle who writes all of these experiences," right? So in a way,
is he in the pride quadrant there?
Exactly. I mean, we're all human, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I just thought this was a very interesting distinction. And with Peter, you always have this thing, he's given 3 times a chance. to correct himself, and 3 times he blows it, right? Anyways, so I talk here about Aghape, how it involves the balancing of the three jewel chakras, second, fourth, and sixth. And I will take you through just a way to meditate on this. The image that follows was given to me, and it was like, okay, ponder on this. And again, it took me years to come to the path I show you today, because I always try to ask myself, how did I experience that? Right? And it isn't until 2 nights ago when I was putting it together that I made the last corrections to it. And I thought, okay, I'm good with this. It can go forward. So, and then the last thing is that Rudolf Steiner claims that Lazarus who is also the brother of Mary Magdalene, he is the John, the beloved. He is the one who became the beloved apostle after Christ raised him from the dead, but it wasn't dead from a sickness. It was near dead due to initiation. So, but I haven't seen anybody else claim that, although Steiner comes to it from a mystic perspective, right? Rather than because he saw it written somewhere. So this is what I was given about the 4 central chakras, 1, 3, 5, and 7. I was given these words: more, which means death, gets harnessed. Remember, the A is the charioteer, or the 2 bulls that pull the plow on the field. It designates harnessing. So amor, which means love, harnesses death. Now, if you take amor and do its mirror image, you get Roma, which means strength. It's the name of Rome, right? By the way, where Peter's church was built, right? And what harnesses Roma? Aroma, which means aromatic, right? And often you experience the presence of a spirit through the smell. They will manifest that before they manifest in light or other ways. So I played around with that, and I thought it's interesting. In Latin, you have all these words correlate that way. And I just put here as a reminder that each of these centers belongs to different densities. So you have earth, fire, water, and air. So the earth, and these are also the 4 trials or the 4 baptisms possible. So the earth baptism is taken by Christ, but only to the degree that he relieves us of the need to have the near-death experience. So symbolically, you can think of it, he cuts off our chains to hell, but he doesn't take us out of hell. We need to step out on our own. And we begin to step out through the water baptism by focusing on love instead of focusing on death. So now, in parallel to this, I want to talk about the 3 gifts from the Magi. And again, this is Rudolf Steiner explanation of what they mean symbolically. So myrrh, which is what you would cover a dead body with, it's symbol for perfection. And you can say that it aligns to the water baptism, which prepares the soul to become individual and to grow consciousness and to rise into first presence. Frankincense, which is what they use in the Orthodox and Catholic churches as an aroma, is a symbol for self-surrender. It aligns to the air baptism, and it really prepares the heart to surrender. What is it it's surrendering to? It's surrendering to its faith in the divine, to its trust in the divine, so that it feels it can let go of the need to judge everything, leave that with the divine, and just trust that you are where you need to be at the right moment. And that's what allows one to enter second presence. And then gold is the symbol for self-knowledge. It aligns to the fire baptism because it prepares the mind to attain to self-knowledge. And it's the kind of self-knowledge that totally overcomes the Medusa left brain, where you keep all the memories that make you angry. And going through the fire baptism allows you to light up the way the apostles did during Pentecost. And mystically, you say what lights up is the midnight or inner sun, and as you enter third presence. So I placed those three in the pathway because my experience was through the water baptism, you moved up to fifth, which is the center of Aghape. And from fifth, you go back down to redeem the third. It's not, if you try to go from first to second to third to fourth, you're blocked on the fourth. There is no entry that way. So the water baptism allows you to bypass that, go to the fifth, and come down from the fifth through acceptance to be able to lift up the Roma to aroma, and that's the gold gift.
I was thinking when you first showed the slide, when you talked about aroma, and you mentioned it when you were going over the three gifts, how churches use the frankincense, and you know, and you were saying aroma helps you connect with spirit. And whenever I smell frankincense, it connects me with, you know, an experience that I'd had within a church or where I've smelt the frankincense. So I was I was thinking that it would be where the gold was instead of the other way around, but I guess it doesn't, you know, because the connection with the aroma and this, of course, I guess you smell myrrh too. But frankincense really hits me because of the experience of going into the churches and smelling it, and you know.
Yes, I agree, but that's an external experience, right? And it's really it's an experience that you have as you are being asked to surrender. And if you think about it, the air baptism is about what you breathe in, right? So frankincense belongs there. The hardest thing to do is the balancing of the left and right brain that allows you to enter that gold perfection of self-knowledge. And I think what becomes very clear here is that while you're chasing external knowledge, or while you live in that Roma state, all you can understand is physical knowledge. And how do you move to the spiritual knowledge, right? That's the path of self-perfection.
It makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I tell you when I have these, it takes me years to settle. I was for a long time with gold moving from amor to Roma and frankincense moving up. But when I try to connect it to my own experience, I begin to see it differ. And also, while I have it wrong, I get woken up and it's like, go correct this. uh, it's almost like my symbolically give to Christ the tools he needs to to tread that path. Because in a way, he's the first one to tread it, right? He's the first one to tread it using agape. In the ancient initiation, it was more still the concept of eros. How do you take eros away from its external passion and make it an internal passion? So I mark these as each being a portal. And as you cross each portal, you move into a presence, right? So the first portal takes you to first presence and so on. It's so important to understand that Christ in his earth trial frees us from the chains of Hades, but it's each of us who must choose to exit hell. And I show here how these align to the 3 baptisms. And then I talk about the church using the frankincense, has a much easier name in Greek. It's called Livani because it comes from Lebanon. It was harvested in Lebanon and anyways, I talk about how they use the myrrh and then how you attain epiphany through agape. And that this is the true gnosis afton that was inscribed in the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. And before you surrender, all knowledge gained is of the visible realm. And this is what we're facing with people who don't understand any of this, right? Because they're looking to control the environment rather than themselves. And they're not in a surrender phase yet.